Adrian Vaughan stood in front of his penthouse window, the city of Los Angeles, sprawling beneath him like a kingdom he had conquered. The rain fell in silver sheets, blurring the neon lights and washing the world in melancholy. He swirled the last of his whiskey, lost in the silence that only power can buy. Adrian was a man who had built everything from nothing. Born in the shadow of poverty, he had clawed his way to the top with sharp elbows and a sharper mind. Vaughan, Maritime, his shipping empire, was the largest on the West Coast. His name was whispered with a mix of awe and fear in every boardroom from Seattle to Singapore. But tonight, he felt uneasy. There was a storm in the air, and not just outside his window. His phone vibrated. The number was unfamiliar, but Adrian never ignored a call. He pressed accept and brought the phone to his ear. Mr. Vaughan. The voice was crisp, professional. This is Charles Whitaker, attorney for the late Mr. Sebastian Callahan. I'm contacting you regarding the reading of Mr. Callahan's last will and testament. You are requested to attend tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, at the Callahan estate. Adrian's hand tightened around the glass. Sebastian Callahan. The name was a ghost from his past, a mentor, a rival, a man who had taught him everything about power and how to wield it. Sebastian had vanished from public life 7 years ago, leaving behind only rumors and the legacy of an empire even greater than Adrian's. Adrian's mind raced. Why now? Why him? He finished his drink in a single swallow, feeling the burn of the liquor all the way down. He stared out at the city, searching for answers in the rain. That night, sleep eluded him. Memories flickered behind his eyes. Sebastian's laughter echoing through marble halls. The sharp scent of expensive cigars. The day he'd first met Evelyn Harper, Sebastian's protégée, and later, Adrian's wife. And then, the day she left, her eyes cold and unreadable, her silence louder than any accusation. The Callahan estate was a monument to old money. Ivy climbed the stone walls, and ancient oaks lined the driveway like sentinels. Adrian's car glided to a stop in front of the grand entrance. He stepped out, straightening his tie, masking his nerves behind a mask of indifference. Inside, the house was alive with whispers, distant relatives, former business partners, and a handful of vultures who had come to pick at the bones of a dead man's fortune. Adrian's gaze swept the room, searching for threats and allies. And then he saw her. Evelyn Harper stood by the fireplace, her posture regal, her eyes sharp. She wore a simple black dress and an emerald necklace that glinted in the firelight. For a moment, Adrian's heart stumbled. She hadn't changed much. Her hair was shorter, her face a little older, but there was a strength in her now that hadn't been there before. Their eyes met. Evelyn's gaze was cool, almost amused. Adrian offered a curt nod, but she turned away, focusing on the flames. Charles Whitaker, the attorney, entered the room and called for silence. He was a thin man in a tailored suit, his presence commanding respect. Thank you all for coming. As executor of Mr. Callahan's estate, it is my duty to read his final wishes. He opened a thick envelope, his voice steady. To my daughter, Evelyn Harper, I leave my entire estate, including my controlling interest in Vaughan Maritime and all associated assets. A stunned silence fell over the room. Adrian felt the world tilt beneath his feet. Daughter. Evelyn's face was frozen in shock, but she recovered quickly, her jaw tightening. Whitaker continued. To Adrian Vaughan, I leave my watch. Time reveals all truths. Adrian's anger flared. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the polished floor. This is a farce, he snapped. I built this company. She's nothing, she's not even. Evelyn cut him off, her voice cold as steel. Not even your equal, Adrian. Or not even your wife anymore. A ripple of whispers swept through the room. Adrian glared at her, but Evelyn's expression was unreadable. Whitaker handed Adrian a small box. Inside was Sebastian's old watch, its face scratched, the leather band worn. On the back, an inscription. Time reveals all truths. Adrian closed the box with a snap. He stormed out of the room, fury burning in his veins. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the air was electric with tension. Evelyn appeared beside him, her heels clicking on the stone. Congratulations, Evelyn. Adrian spat. You finally got what you wanted. Evelyn looked at him, her eyes sad but resolute. You have no idea what I want, Adrian. And neither did Sebastian. He laughed bitterly. Don't flatter yourself. You're just a pawn in his last game. She shook her head. We're all pawns, Adrian. The only difference is who's playing the board. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Adrian alone in the gathering dark. Adrian drove home in silence, his mind a battlefield. He replayed the reading of the will over and over, searching for a loophole, a weakness, anything he could use. He called his lawyer, demanded the will be contested, but Whitaker was ironclad. Sebastian had planned every detail. He poured himself another drink, staring at the old watch. Time reveals all truths. What truth was Sebastian hiding? And why give everything to Evelyn? Adrian's thoughts turned dark. He remembered the last time he'd seen Sebastian. Years ago, in this very penthouse. You're too hungry, Adrian, Sebastian had said, his voice heavy with disappointment. You think power is a prize, but it's a burden. One day, you'll understand. Adrian had laughed then, dismissing the old man's warnings. But now, with everything slipping through his fingers, he wondered if Sebastian had been right. He set the watch on his desk, its ticking suddenly unbearably loud. Outside, the city glowed. Indifferent to his pain, Adrian made a silent vow. He would not lose. Not to Evelyn, not to the ghost of Sebastian Callahan. Whatever it took, he would reclaim what was his. And so the game began. A game of power, secrets, and revenge, a game that would leave no one unscathed. Adrian Vaughan was not a man who accepted defeat. The morning after the will reading, he sat in his office, the city still shrouded in mist, and stared at the headlines. Evelyn Harper inherits. Callahan fortune. Vaughan and Maritime faces new era. He crushed the newspaper in his fist. His boardroom, once a place of absolute control, now felt like enemy territory. He summoned his most trusted advisor, Lucas Grant, a man as sharp and ruthless as Adrian himself. Find me something, anything I can use against her, Adrian ordered, voice low and dangerous. No one takes what's mine and walks away. Lucas nodded, already scrolling through his phone. She's clean. Boss. No scandals. No debts. No enemies, at least. None that talk. Adrian's jaw clenched. Everyone has a weakness. Dig deeper. He spent the rest of the day in a haze of phone calls and legal briefings. His lawyers pored over the will, searching for loopholes. But Sebastian Callahan had been meticulous. The legal fortress was impenetrable. That evening, Adrian stood before the vast windows of his office, watching the city pulse with life. He remembered the first time he'd met Evelyn, her laughter, her fierce intelligence, the way she'd challenged him in every conversation. He remembered the last fight, the words he could never take back. He poured himself another drink, but it tasted like ashes. Meanwhile, Evelyn Harper sat in a modest apartment, the emerald necklace heavy around her neck. She stared at the stack of legal documents, Sebastian's signature scrawled across every page. She felt the weight of the world pressing down on her. She had never wanted, never asked to inherit an empire built on secrets and ruthlessness. But she would not run. Not this time. Her phone buzzed. It was Jordan Lee, an old friend and now an investigative journalist. Evelyn, I heard about the will. The vultures are circling. You need to be careful. She smiled, though her voice was tired. I know. Jordan, but I'm not the same woman I was. I won't let Adrian destroy me. Jordan hesitated. He's dangerous. More than you know. Evelyn's eyes hardened. So am I. Lucas returned with a file. We found something. Vaughan Maritime's environmental records. There are gaps, missing reports, and a whistleblower who disappeared last year. Adrian's eyes narrowed. Cover it up. Pay whoever you need to, and if Evelyn tries to dig, make her regret it. Lucas hesitated. If this gets out, it could destroy the company. Adrian's voice was ice. Then it won't get out. Evelyn spent her nights reading through company records, searching for the truth Sebastian had hidden. She found inconsistencies, numbers that didn't add up, contracts signed in the dead of night. She called a board meeting, her first as the new majority owner. The room was tense, filled with old men who had served Adrian loyally for years. Evelyn stood at the head of the table, her voice steady. I know you're all nervous. Change is never easy. But Vaughan Maritime will not be run by fear and secrecy any longer. We will be transparent. We will be ethical. And we will be better. A few board members exchanged glances, unimpressed. One, a grizzled executive named Howard, sneered. You think you can just walk in here and change everything? You don't know this business. Evelyn met his gaze. No, but I know what it's like to lose everything. And I know what it means to fight for what's right. If you can't accept that, you're free to leave. There was a long silence. Then, slowly, a few heads nodded. Adrian watched the board meeting from his office, a live feed playing on his computer. He saw the way Evelyn commanded the room, the way she refused to back down. He felt a flicker of something pride, regret. He crushed it ruthlessly. He called Victor Chen, his old rival. Victor, it's time. Start buying up shares. Quietly. I want her out before she even knows what hit her. Victor's laugh was cold. You always did like a good fight. Adrian's lips curled into a smile. This isn't a fight. It's a war. That night, Evelyn received an anonymous tip, an email with a single sentence. Check the contracts from 2018. Follow the money. She stayed up until dawn, tracing wire transfers, shell companies, offshore accounts. The deeper she dug, the more she realized Sebastian had left her not just a company, but a puzzle, and at the heart of it was Adrian. As the sun rose over Los Angeles, two former lovers prepared for battle, one fueled by vengeance, the other by a determination to survive. Neither would back down. Neither would surrender. And the first blows had only just been struck. Evelyn Harper's world had changed overnight. The empire she'd inherited was both a gift and a curse. Every day brought new challenges, hostile board members, angry shareholders, and the ever-present shadow of Adrian Vaughn. She worked late into the night, poring over contracts and financial statements, searching for the rot Sebastian had left behind. The deeper she dug, the more she realized how much of Vaughn Maritime's success was built on secrets, lies, and the suffering of others. Jordan Lee, the journalist and her trusted friend, became her closest ally. He brought her coffee in the mornings and stacks of documents at night. Together, they traced the flow of money from shell company to shell company, uncovering a vast network of illegal dumping, bribery, and tax evasion. One evening, Jordan burst into her office, eyes wide with excitement. I found it. Evelyn, the shell company that handled the offshore accounts. It's registered to a holding group in the Caymans. And guess who's on the board? Evelyn didn't have to guess. Adrian. Jordan nodded. He's been laundering money for years. If we can prove it, we can take him down. Evelyn's hands trembled as she held the file. She knew what this meant. She could destroy Adrian, ruin him, the way he'd tried to ruin her. But she also knew the cost. The company would suffer. Thousands of jobs could be lost. The legacy Sebastian had left her would be tainted forever. She closed her eyes, remembering the day she'd first met Adrian. He'd been magnetic, ambitious, unstoppable. She'd loved him once, but that man was gone. Adrian, meanwhile, was orchestrating his own campaign. With Victor Chen's help, he quietly bought up shares, turning old allies into new enemies for Evelyn. He leaked stories to the press, painting her as an inexperienced heiress, unfit to lead. His office became a war room. Maps of corporate holdings, lists of shareholders, dossiers on every board member. Lucas Grant, his advisor, was everywhere at once, making calls, arranging meetings, bribing anyone who could be bribed. But Adrian was restless. He couldn't sleep. He dreamed of Evelyn, of Sebastian, of the watch ticking endlessly on his desk. He remembered Sebastian's words. You think power is a prize, but it's a burden. One day, you'll understand. He poured himself another drink, trying to drown out the voice. One night, Evelyn received a threatening letter slipped under her door. Back off, or you'll regret it. She showed it to Jordan, who frowned. He's getting desperate. Evelyn's voice was steady. So am I. She called a press conference the next morning. The room was packed with reporters, cameras flashing. Vaughn Maritime has a responsibility to the people of this city and to the world, she began. In the coming weeks, we will be conducting a full audit of our environmental practices. Any wrongdoing will be exposed and corrected, no matter who is responsible. The board erupted in chaos. Adrian watched the broadcast from his office, fury burning in his chest. She's going to destroy us, Lucas warned. Adrian's eyes were cold. Then we destroy her first. That night, Adrian arranged a meeting with Victor Chen. They met in a private room at an exclusive club, the air thick with cigar smoke and secrets. She's making moves, Adrian said. We need to move faster. Victor smiled. Shark-like. I have a man inside. He can plant evidence, make it look like Evelyn's been embezzling funds. The board will turn on her. Adrian nodded. Do it. But as he left the club, a sense of unease gnawed at him. He remembered Evelyn's eyes, the way she'd looked at him at the will reading, not with fear, but with pity. He shook off the feeling. There was no room for doubt. Not now. Evelyn's audit uncovered more than she'd expected. Not just environmental crimes, but evidence of a massive cover-up document signed by Adrian. Money funneled through offshore accounts, bribes paid to inspectors and politicians. She confronted the board, laying out the evidence. Some were shocked. Others were complicit. Howard, the grizzled executive, tried to shout her down. You're destroying this company. Evelyn's voice was calm but unyielding. No, Howard, I'm saving it. If we don't come clean, we'll lose everything. The board was divided. Some backed Evelyn. Others plotted with Adrian in the shadows. Late one night, Jordan called Evelyn. We have a problem. Someone's trying to frame you. I found fake invoices. Forged signatures if this goes public. You'll be ruined. Evelyn's heart pounded. Who? Victor Chen. And Adrian. Evelyn's hands shook, but her voice was steady. Then we fight back. She called a meeting with her lawyers, her PR team, and a handful of loyal board members. They worked through the night, gathering evidence, preparing statements, planning their counterattack. The next morning, the news broke. Vaughan Maritime CEO, accused of embezzlement, board calls, emergency vote. Evelyn was summoned to an emergency board meeting. The room was packed, the air electric with tension. Victor Chen stood, waving a stack of papers. These documents prove Evelyn Harper has been siphoning company funds into her own accounts. She's betrayed us all. Evelyn stood, her voice clear and strong. Those documents are forgeries. Here's the proof. She handed out her own stack of evidence emails, bank statements, video footage of Victor's man planting the fake invoices. The room erupted in chaos. Howard tried to shout her down, but the tide had turned. One by one, the board members sided with Evelyn. Victor was escorted out by security, his face twisted in rage. Adrian watched it all unfold from his office, his hands shaking with fury. That night, Adrian sat alone in his penthouse, the city lights flickering below. He stared at Sebastian's watch. It's ticking louder than ever. He remembered the last time he'd seen Sebastian. Years ago, in this very room. You're too hungry. Adrian, Sebastian had said, one day, you'll lose everything chasing what you can never have. Adrian hurled the watch across the room, shattering it against the wall. But the ticking continued, echoing in his mind. The war was far from over. For Adrian and Evelyn, the first battle had been won. But the real fight, the fight for the soul of Vaughan Maritime, and for their own souls, was only just beginning. Adrian Vaughan sat in the darkness of his penthouse, city lights flickering like dying embers beneath him. The taste of defeat was bitter, but he was not a man who surrendered. The board's vote had been a blow, but not a fatal one. He still had allies, men and women who owed him favors, who feared his wrath, who believed in his vision of power at any cost. He called Lucas Grant, his advisor, to his side. We need to hit her where it hurts, find her secrets, find her weaknesses. If she has family, friends, lovers make them afraid. Make her afraid. Lucas nodded, vanishing into the night. Adrian poured himself a drink, staring at the shattered watch on his desk. The ticking in his head would not stop. Meanwhile, Evelyn Harper was fighting her own battles. The victory at the board meeting had been hard won, but it came at a price. Her days were filled with meetings, audits, and endless questions from the press. Her nights were haunted by dreams of Sebastian, of Adrian, of a future she could barely imagine. Jordan Lee was her anchor. Together, they mapped out a plan to rebuild Vaughan Maritime from the inside out, cleaning up its environmental record, reaching out to communities harmed by its past, and rooting out every last trace of corruption. It was exhausting, but Evelyn refused to give up. She owed it to Sebastian. She owed it to herself. But the threats kept coming. anonymous emails, phone calls in the dead of night. Once, she came home to find her apartment ransacked, her belongings smashed and scattered. On her bathroom mirror, written in lipstick, were the words, "You're next." Evelyn called the police, but they could do little. She installed new locks, hired security, and kept going. One evening, Jordan burst into her office. "You need to see this." He handed her a file photos of Adrian meeting with Victor Chen, exchanging envelopes, shaking hands in shadowy corners. "He's planning something big," Jordan said. "I think he's going after your family." Evelyn's heart pounded. "My family is gone." "Jordan, Adrian already took everything from me." Jordan hesitated. "Not everything. There's something you don't know." He pulled out another envelope, this one marked with Sebastian's handwriting. Inside was a birth certificate, Evelyn's son, Lucas Harper Vaughan, born 7 years ago, died 2 years later. Cause of death, leukemia. Evelyn's hand shook. "Why are you showing me this?" Jordan's voice was gentle. "Because I found something else." Medical records. Lucas was exposed to toxic chemicals, the same chemicals Vaughan Maritime dumped in the river, the same chemicals Adrian signed off on. Evelyn felt the world tilt. The pain she'd buried for years came roaring back. Her son had died because of Adrian, because of the company she now controlled. She wiped her tears, her voice cold. "Then we bring him down, not just for me, for Lucas, for everyone he's hurt." Adrian's campaign of intimidation escalated. He sent men to follow Evelyn, to threaten her allies, to sabotage her work. But Evelyn was ready. She hired private security, moved to a safe house, and doubled down on her investigation. She and Jordan uncovered more evidence: bank records, emails, secret recordings of Adrian and Victor plotting to frame her for embezzlement and fraud. They compiled a dossier and prepared to go public. But Adrian was always one step ahead. He hacked into their computers, erased files, planted false evidence. He bribed reporters, twisted the story, turned public opinion against Evelyn. The pressure mounted. Shareholders panicked. The board wavered. Evelyn felt the walls closing in. One night, as she drove home from the office, a black SUV rammed her car off the road. She crawled from the wreckage, blood streaming down her face, her vision swimming. She staggered into the darkness, hiding in the shadows as her attackers searched for her. She called Jordan, her voice barely a whisper. "They're trying to kill me." Jordan found her, got her to a hospital, and stayed by her side as she recovered. The attack only hardened her resolve. When she returned to work, she called a press conference. She stood before the cameras, her face bruised but unbowed. "Someone wants me silenced," she said. "But I will not be intimidated. Vaughan Maritime belongs to the people, not to those who profit from pain and fear. I will see this fight through to the end." The public rallied to her side. Donations poured in. Whistleblowers came forward. The tide began to turn. Late one night, Evelyn received an encrypted email. The sender was anonymous, but the message was clear. "Meet me at the old Callahan warehouse. Midnight. Come alone." She debated ignoring it, but something in her gut told her this was important. She slipped away from her security detail and drove to the warehouse. Inside, she found a man waiting in the shadows. He stepped forward, and Evelyn gasped. It was Sebastian Callahan alive. He looked older, thinner, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. "Hello, Evelyn," he said. "I'm sorry for everything." Evelyn's voice shook. "You're supposed to be dead." Sebastian smiled sadly. "I had to disappear. There were people after me, people who would have killed you, too, if they knew you were my daughter." He handed her a flash drive. "Everything you need to destroy Adrian is on here. Use it wisely." Evelyn stared at him, anger and relief warring inside her. "Why now?" Sebastian's eyes were haunted. "Because I made mistakes. I let Adrian become a monster. I let you suffer. I can't fix the past, but I can help you fix the future." He vanished into the night, leaving Evelyn alone with the evidence that could end Adrian once and for all. The city was still asleep when the FBI vans rolled up to the glass towers of Vaughan Maritime. Dawn was just breaking, painting the sky with streaks of pale gold and bruised violet. But inside the building, chaos had already erupted. Adrian Vaughan was in his corner office, pacing like a caged animal. He'd barely slept for days. Every phone call was a threat, every email a potential disaster. The walls felt like they were closing in, suffocating him with the weight of his own ambition. Lucas Grant burst into the room, his face pale. "They're here," he whispered. "FBI. They have a warrant. They're searching everything." Adrian's jaw tightened. He strode to the window and looked down. Agents in navy jackets were streaming through the lobby, badges flashing, radios crackling. He turned to Lucas, voice cold and sharp. "Destroy the hard drives. Get rid of anything that ties me to Chen or the Caymans. Now." But it was too late. The doors crashed open. Agents poured in, guns drawn, shouting commands. Adrian's staff scattered in terror. Lucas tried to slip away, but was tackled to the ground. An agent in a crisp suit approached Adrian. "Adrian Vaughn, you are under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, money laundering, and environmental crimes. You have the right to remain silent." Adrian glared at him, refusing to flinch. "You're making a mistake. I built this city. You can't touch me." The agent only tightened the cuffs on Adrian's wrists. "You're not untouchable, Mr. Vaughn. Not anymore." As Adrian was led through the lobby, a sea of reporters surged forward, microphones thrust like weapons. "Mr. Vaughn, did you embezzle company funds? Is it true you ordered the chemical dumping? Do you have anything to say to your employees?" Adrian set his jaw, eyes burning with defiance. He said nothing, but the cameras captured every second the fall of a titan, broadcast live for the world to see. Upstairs, Evelyn Harper watched the newsfeed on her office monitor. She felt no joy, no triumph, only a heavy, aching sorrow. She had won, yes, but at what cost? Her phone rang. It was Jordan Lee. "It's over, Evelyn. The FBI has everything. Chen, Lucas. The offshore accounts, they're all going down." Evelyn closed her eyes. "Thank you, Jordan. I couldn't have done this without you." Jordan's voice was gentle. "You did what had to be done. For Lucas, for everyone Adrian hurt." She nodded, but her heart was heavy. She remembered the first days with Adrian, the laughter, the hope, the dreams of building something good. How had it come to this? Downstairs, the employees of Vaughn Maritime gathered in clusters, whispering anxiously. Some were relieved. Others were angry, afraid for their jobs, their futures. Evelyn called an emergency meeting. She stood before them, her voice steady but her hands trembling. "I know you're scared," she began. "I know you're angry. But this company will survive. We will rebuild. We will do things the right way from now on. Vaughn Maritime will be a force for good, not greed." A silence followed. Then, slowly, a few people began to clap. The applause grew, hesitant but hopeful. Evelyn smiled, blinking back tears. For the first time, she felt the weight of true leadership. Adrian Vaughn had always believed that power was the only thing that mattered. Now, stripped of his title, his wealth, and his freedom, he faced a new reality, one defined by concrete walls, iron bars, and the relentless ticking of time. His cell was small, barely large enough for a cot and a metal sink. The window was little more than a slit, offering a sliver of grey sky and, on rare days, a glimpse of sunlight. Each morning, he awoke to the clang of metal doors, the shouts of guards, and the distant murmurs of other inmates. He moved through the days like a ghost, haunted by memories he could not escape. At first, he raged against his fate. He cursed Evelyn, Sebastian, the FBI, even Lucas Grant for turning on him in court. He spent hours pacing his cell, plotting appeals, writing letters to lawyers, refusing to accept defeat. But as the weeks turned to months, something inside him began to shift. The anger burned out, leaving only a hollow ache. He found himself staring at the ceiling, replaying the choices that had led him here. He remembered the first time he'd met Evelyn, her laughter, her fire, the way she'd challenged him to be better. He remembered the day she'd left, the cold finality in her eyes. He remembered Lucas, the son he'd never known, the child he'd lost without ever realizing what he had. Sometimes, late at night, Adrian would sit on his cot and whisper apologies to the darkness. "I'm sorry, Evelyn. I'm sorry, Lucas. I'm sorry, Sebastian. I'm sorry for everything." But the walls never answered. Evelyn Harper visited Lucas's grave every week. The cemetery was quiet, a sanctuary of green amid the city's chaos. She brought fresh flowers, white lilies, Lucas's favorite, and sat by the stone, talking softly to her son. I did it. Lucas, she would say. I kept my promise. The bad men are gone. The company is changing. Maybe the world will be a little better. Because of you. She told him about her days, the board meetings, the lawsuits, the endless work of rebuilding. She told him about the children whose lives were saved by the new clean water projects, the families who sent her thank you notes, the way the city was starting to heal. But she also told him about her fears. I'm so tired. Lucas, sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing. Sometimes I wonder if I became just like Adrian, so focused on winning that I forgot what really matters. She would close her eyes, listening for an answer in the wind, but the only response was silence. Jordan Lee had become Evelyn's closest confidant. He saw the toll the fight had taken on her, the sleepless nights, the haunted eyes, the way she flinched at shadows. One evening, as they sat in her office, Jordan poured her a cup of tea. You need to rest. Evelyn, you've done enough. She shook her head. There's always more to do. The lawsuits, the settlements, the new projects. I can't stop now. Jordan leaned forward, his voice gentle. You're allowed to be human. You're allowed to grieve. Evelyn looked away, blinking back tears. If I stop, I'll fall apart. Jordan reached across the desk, taking her hand. Then let yourself fall apart. I'll help you pick up the pieces. For the first time in months, Evelyn allowed herself to cry. The tears came in great, racking sobs, months of pain and guilt and exhaustion pouring out at last. Jordan held her, saying nothing, simply letting her be. Adrian's trial dragged on for weeks. The media feasted on every detail, the secret accounts, the bribes, the environmental devastation. Former allies testified against him, desperate to save themselves. In the courtroom, Adrian sat stone-faced, refusing to show emotion. But inside, he was unraveling. Every accusation was a knife. Every photograph of Evelyn on the witness stand was a reminder of what he'd lost. His lawyer urged him to take a plea deal, 20 years, with the possibility of parole. Adrian refused. I won't admit guilt, he snarled. I won't give them the satisfaction. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury found him guilty on all counts. The judge's words echoed in the silent courtroom. Adrian Vaughan, you are hereby sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. Adrian didn't flinch. He stared straight ahead, jaw set, refusing to let them see him break. But as he was led away in chains, he caught Evelyn's eye. For a moment, he saw not hatred, but pity. It was almost worse than anger. Evelyn threw herself into her work. She visited hospitals, spoke at schools, launched new environmental initiatives. She met with victims of Vaughan Maritime's past, listened to their stories, and promised to do better. But the weight of her choices pressed down on her. She dreamed of Lucas, of Adrian, of Sebastian. She wondered if she had truly won, or if the price had been too high. One afternoon, after a long day of meetings, Evelyn found herself in the hospital's pediatric wing. She watched children play in the sunlit atrium, their laughter echoing off the walls. A little boy with bright blue eyes ran up to her, tugging at her sleeve. Are you the lady who fixed the water? Evelyn knelt, smiling through her tears. Yes, I am. The boy hugged her, small arms tight around her neck. Thank you. In that moment, Evelyn felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could find forgiveness. Adrian received few visitors in prison. His lawyers came and went, bringing bad news and false hope. Reporters wrote him letters, begging for interviews, but he ignored them. One day, a guard appeared at his cell. You have a visitor. Adrian was led to the visitation room, where a glass wall separated him from the outside world. He sat, hands folded, waiting. Evelyn entered, her face pale but resolute. She picked up the phone. Adrian hesitated, then did the same. They stared at each other for a long moment, neither speaking. Finally, Evelyn broke the silence. I didn't come here to gloat. I came to tell you that I forgive you. Adrian's eyes widened. Why? Evelyn's voice trembled, but she held his gaze. Because I can't carry this anger anymore. It's killing me, and I think it's killing you, too. Adrian looked away, jaw clenched. I don't want your forgiveness. Evelyn nodded. That's your choice. But I needed to say it. She stood to leave, but paused. "Goodbye, Adrian." He watched her go, something breaking inside him. For the first time, he allowed himself to hope that redemption might be possible. Evelyn walked out of the prison, the sun warm on her face. She took a deep breath, feeling lighter than she had in years. She knew the road ahead would be hard. There would be more battles, more losses, more pain. But for the first time, she believed she could survive. She believed she could heal. And somewhere, deep inside, she believed that even Adrian might find peace. Evelyn Harper sat at the head of the new Vaughan Maritime boardroom, sunlight streaming across a table now filled with fresh faces, the scientists, community leaders, and young executives eager for change. Gone were the old guard, the men who had once sneered at her vision. In their place, a new generation had risen, inspired by her courage and resilience. But the work was far from over. Every day brought new challenges, lawsuits from former shareholders, demands for restitution from families harmed by the company's past, relentless scrutiny from the media, always searching for a crack in her armor. Evelyn faced it all with a quiet determination. She spent her mornings in meetings, her afternoons in the field touring cleanup sites, visiting schools, listening to the stories of those who had suffered. She made it a point to shake every hand, look every person in the eye, and promise that things would be different. Some days, the burden felt unbearable. At night, alone in her apartment, she would stare at the city lights and wonder if she was truly making a difference, or if she was simply trying to atone for sins that could never be forgiven. But then she would remember Lucas's smile, the way he'd clung to her hand in the hospital, and she would find the strength to keep going. One morning, as Evelyn sorted through a stack of mail, she found a small, elegant package. There was no return address, only her name written in Sebastian's familiar hand. Inside was the old watch, Sebastian's watch, the one he'd left to Adrian. It had been repaired, its face polished, the leather band replaced. On the back, a new inscription had been added. Time reveals all truths. Forgive yourself. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. She turned the watch over in her hands, feeling its weight, its history. She remembered Sebastian's words, the lessons he had tried to teach her and Adrian about power, legacy, and the cost of ambition. She slipped the watch onto her wrist, feeling a sense of closure she hadn't realized she needed. That afternoon, Evelyn attended the opening of a new community center, built on the site of a former toxic waste dump. The air was clean now, the soil fertile, the river running clear. Children played on the grass, their laughter ringing out across the field. Parents stood nearby, watching with cautious hope. Evelyn took the stage, her voice steady and warm. "This land was once poisoned," she said, "but together, we have brought it back to life. This is only the beginning. Vaughan Maritime is committed to healing the wounds of the past and building a better future for everyone." The crowd erupted in applause. For the first time in years, Evelyn allowed herself to believe that redemption was possible, not just for the company, but for herself. Late that night, as Evelyn sat at her desk, her phone buzzed with a new message. The sender was unknown. The message was simple. "Be careful. Not everyone forgives." A chill ran down her spine. She stared at the screen, her mind racing. Was it a threat, a warning, or simply a reminder that the past was never truly gone? She forwarded the message to Jordan, who promised to look into it. But Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that somewhere, in the shadows, old enemies still lurked. In a dimly lit bar on the edge of the city, Adrian Vaughan sat alone, nursing a glass of whiskey. His hair was longer now, streaked with grey, his face gaunt but his eyes still burning with a fierce intelligence. He watched the news on a small television above the bar, Evelyn's speech at the community centre, the crowd's adoration, the headlines hailing her as a hero. Adrian's lips curled into a bitter smile. A man slid onto the stool beside him, a stranger, or perhaps an old acquaintance from another life. "You gonna let her get away with it?" the man asked, voice low. Adrian took a slow sip of his drink. She didn't get away with anything. She won, fair and square. The man leaned in. "Doesn't mean you can't take it back." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "Maybe, or maybe it's time to let go." He finished his drink, set the glass down, and stood. But as he walked into the night, a plan was already forming in his mind, a final move, a last chance to reclaim what he had lost. or at least to make Evelyn pay one more price. Back at Vaughan Maritime, Evelyn worked late into the night, reviewing proposals for new projects, solar farms, clean water systems, scholarships for children in affected communities. Jordan entered, holding a thick folder. "We've got a problem," he said. "There's been a data breach. Someone's trying to sabotage the new environmental initiative." Evelyn's heart sank. "Who?" Jordan shook his head. "We don't know yet, but it's sophisticated, someone with inside knowledge." Evelyn's mind raced. Was it Adrian, one of his old allies, or a new enemy, rising from the ashes of the old regime? She straightened her shoulders. "We'll handle it. We always do." But as she stared out at the city, she knew the fight was far from over. That night, Evelyn dreamed of Lucas. In her dream, he was running through a field of wildflowers, laughing, calling her name. She chased after him, but no matter how fast she ran, she could never quite reach him. When she awoke, tears streamed down her face, but she felt lighter, as if a burden had been lifted. She rose, dressed, and faced the new day with renewed determination. In the weeks that followed, Evelyn and her team worked tirelessly to secure their systems, root out the saboteurs, and protect the progress they had made. The attacks continued: cyber attacks, smear campaigns, anonymous threats, but Evelyn refused to back down. She had survived worse. She would survive this. And through it all, she remembered Sebastian's watch on her wrist, its steady ticking a reminder that time moved forward, no matter how dark the night. One afternoon, Evelyn stood on the balcony of her office, watching the sun set over the ocean. She thought of all she had lost, and all she had gained. She thought of Adrian, somewhere out there in the city, plotting his next move. She thought of Lucas, and Sebastian, and the countless lives touched by her choices, and she thought of herself not as a victim or a hero, but as a survivor. As the sky faded to twilight, Evelyn whispered a silent promise to the future. "I will not let the past define me. I will build something better. For Lucas, for everyone." The morning sun glimmered across the Pacific, painting the world in gold. Evelyn Harper stood on the balcony of her modest seaside home, a cup of coffee warming her hands. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of salt and promise. She closed her eyes, letting the breeze tangle her hair, and breathed in the peace she had fought so hard to find. It had been nearly a year since Adrian Vaughan's conviction. The world had moved on, as it always did. Vaughan Maritime, now rebranded as Harper Global Initiatives, had become a beacon of corporate responsibility. The company's name was spoken with respect in boardrooms and classrooms alike, a model for what redemption could look like in business. But for Evelyn, the journey was still unfolding. She spent her days traveling, visiting new clean water projects, meeting with families whose lives had been changed, speaking at universities about ethics and leadership. She found joy in the small things: a child's laughter, a mother's gratitude, the sight of wildflowers blooming where once there had been only poisoned earth. At night, she would return to her quiet home by the sea. Sometimes, she would sit on the porch, watching the stars, and think of Lucas. She would tell him about her day, about the people she had helped, about the world she was trying to build in his memory. There were still moments of pain, dreams where she saw his face, heard his voice, felt his small hand in hers. But the pain was softer now, woven through with hope and love. One evening, as Evelyn sorted through a stack of letters from children around the world, she found a familiar handwriting. It was from Jordan Lee, now the director of the Harper Foundation's investigative arm. "Evelyn," the letter began, "I thought you'd like to know. The last of the lawsuits has been settled. The families are getting their compensation. The river is clean. You did it." She smiled, tears stinging her eyes. She had not done it alone, but the words meant more than she could say. That weekend, Evelyn walked along the shore, the sand cool beneath her feet. She watched a group of children building a sandcastle, their laughter ringing out over the waves. A little girl ran up to her, holding out a shell. "This is for you," she said shyly. Evelyn knelt, accepting the gift with a smile. "Thank you. It's beautiful." The girl beamed, then ran back to her friends. Evelyn turned the shell over in her hand, marveling at its fragile perfection. She thought of all the broken things she had tried to mend her company, her heart, her faith in the world. Maybe, she thought, Some things could never be made whole again. But maybe, just maybe, they could be made beautiful in a new way. Across the city, in a smoky bar where the lights were always low and the air always heavy, Adrian Vaughan sat alone. His hair was longer now, streaked with silver. His face leaner, sharper. He watched the world through the bottom of a glass, his eyes hard and unreadable. He had served a year in prison, but good lawyers and old favors had bought him an early release. The world had not welcomed him back. Former allies avoided him, old enemies circled, waiting for weakness. But Adrian was not broken. He was changed. He watched Evelyn's face on the television above the bar, her smile, her grace, the way people leaned in to listen when she spoke. He remembered the day she had visited him in prison, the words she had spoken. "I forgive you." He had not believed her. He was not sure he believed her now. But the words echoed in his mind. Day after day, night after night, Adrian left the bar and walked the city streets, lost in thought. He passed the old Vaughan Maritime building now, Harper Global Initiatives, its glass facade gleaming in the moonlight. He paused, staring up at the logo, the new name. He felt a pang of something regret, perhaps, or envy, or simply the ache of a life that could have been different. He turned away, blending into the shadows. Evelyn sat on her porch, Sebastian's watch ticking steadily on her wrist. She thought of all that had happened, of Sebastian, of Lucas, of Adrian. She thought of the choices she had made, the battles she had fought, the price she had paid for justice and revenge. She wondered if she had truly forgiven Adrian, or if she had simply grown tired of hating him. She wondered if he would ever forgive himself. She wondered if she would. The world moved on. New challenges arose: climate change, poverty, injustice. Evelyn faced them as she always had, with courage, with compassion, with an unbreakable will. She knew the scars of the past would never fully fade, but she also knew that scars were a sign of healing, of survival, and she was a survivor. In the quiet of the evening, as the stars blinked into existence above the sea, Evelyn whispered a prayer not for revenge, not for victory, but for peace, for herself, for Adrian, for everyone who had been caught in the storm. Because in the end, time reveals all truths, and the greatest revenge is not in destroying your enemy, but in building a life they can never take from you.